Gaming is in session, baby. It is the Halloween episode. We're talking Silent Hill 2 remake. Alex, we finished the game, but before we dive in, I have a question for you. What do you call a haunted chicken?
A ghost, not a ghost chicken. A spook chicken, a spookin. I don't know, man. A rooster. What? What do you call it?
A poultrygeist. You got it? You
I
got it?
do. I like the wordplay of it, and I also appreciate just for so the listeners know. Adam had a much spicier joke that I had to veto leading into this. Send us a DM if you want to know what his spicier joke was.
Yeah. You know, it had to do with my little Pikachu ears.
Little double
Here's
fist
the
and some
thing.
Pikachu ears, yeah.
Alex, I know with the red, it may be a little difficult to tell, but do you think do I look all right? Do I look good?
You look good. You look like something I could stare into and save my current progress.
Oh, baby. Here's the thing. I lost about I don't know, 2 kilos, I would say, of weight. Could you tell?
I couldn't tell. How'd you lose it, Adam?
I got circumcision. Boom! It is gaming is in session. I cannot wait. I've been waiting a while to finish Silent Hill 2 remake. And before we even hop into the game, you know how it goes. Let's roll with our gamer juice. And Alex, I have Arizona Hard Watermelon Cowboy Cocktail. I was like, I need alcohol to get through this freaking podcast, this one right here. But here we go. Down the hatch, baby.
Arizona hard. California cocktail watermelon juice.
Oh
How many
God.
words did they throw in there?
Oh, that's not good.
That's
Oh
like when I
my.
got the ranch water. Yeah, it's not good. What do you think is the
Oh,
bad part of that? The watermelon?
there's no. It's not sweet at all.
Yeah, yeah. That's
Oh
so
God.
the funny thing about watermelon juice, like watermelon juice sounds good because watermelon tastes amazing. When you drink watermelon juice, it tastes like the white part of the watermelon that's like between the fruit and the rind. I and so I never really like watermelon juice. That's
Also, this thing doesn't have nutrition facts on it.
yeah, alcoholic beverages don't always have that. Yeah.
I thought what? Yes, it's oh dang, I gotta finish it now too.
Yeah.
It tastes like tainted watermelon juice that has no sugar in it. All right, it's terrible. Wow.
Put an emergency in it. Maybe it'll taste better.
It's downstairs. Okay, what are you
So I
drinking?
got two gamer juices. You can decide which one. Actually, I know which one I'm going to start with, but I'll drink both of them. Went to the Asian grocery store today. I have a do you know Astro Boy? Like one of the first anime out there that people like. This is the Astro Boy drink. It's called
I've seen pictures, but I don't know anything about it.
yeah. In Japan, it's called Atom Boy. It's called Atom Power Up Zero. It's like a 0 calorie energy drink cola or something. It's actually a really cool can. I should have got two that way I could drink one and keep the other because I really like this guy. Hey, this should be one of the games we play for gaming is in session. The Game Boy Advance version of this game, so freaking good.
Why not? Yeah, let's
My
do
other
it.
drink, it's a beer. And I just got it because it's called Sorry. I I don't
Yeah,
know why,
you should feel sorry for making me play this bullcrap game.
but
That is the most appropriate gamer juice I've ever heard in my life.
in the Japanese part says like kitanaize, which is like not necessarily sorry. Maybe it means sorry. It's a Nippon citrus, a Japanese citrus ale with yuzu and sea salt. I'll probably open both of them here. I'll start with the Astro Boy though. Yeah, Adam, I'm loving that costume. Are you gonna have the red light on the whole time? Because I like it. It's harder to see you, but I like it.
Here's the thing. I did not realize there were a couple things that this game truly did for me. The first thing, I realize, I don't know why, red light is scarier than darkness. The
Yeah,
moments in the game, in the prison, where it was red light, terrifying. I
yeah.
don't understand why, but so I saw that, I was like, wow, like that. So then what I did is in one of my windows in my house in the top, I have Michael Myers, and I was like, I'm throwing a red light in there, and it looked incredible from the street.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so then I was like, I'm just gonna do it for the podcast too. F it. This isn't gonna be a normal thing, just tonight, but I'm keeping it on, baby. Isn't
That's
red supposed to also just make your balls swell with sperm and testosterone and animal sexuality too?
that's what's happening to me. All three of those things are happening to me because of your Pikachu mask. Yeah.
Yeah, my little, yeah, my little
I'll be honest, Adam. That's properly horrifying. If I wasn't recording a podcast with you and I was just watching your camera footage, I'd be very terrified.
Did you ever heard of that app called what's it called? Omegle or something?
Omegle, yeah, yeah, that'd be so
Imagine
scary.
just getting on there and then a dude
Hmm. In a
just
judge
staring
outfit,
at your
yeah,
soul. Oh yeah.
yeah.
I'm pretty
Adam,
sure it's just a front
oh yeah, I think it
for
got shut down a
sex
long time
or
ago.
something,
Yeah,
right? Yeah, I don't. Hey, this is enough. We need to get into it. We got fan shout outs. We always have fan shout outs because we have great fans.
yeah. A couple
Let's
of
talk
fan shout
about
outs here. From Picto 491. Congrats, bro. You made it into my recommended feed. You might have a blow up soon, but maybe it's just because I have a bunch of Silent Hill 2 in my feed. Good luck. That's that makes me feel good, Adam, because I thought we got shadow banned because of how awful our content is.
it. Maybe, and I don't know. uh, I guess we haven't had a blow up quite yet, but I'm glad you were able to find us, Picto. That's awesome. YouTube identifying the OGs, the best content on the web, and telling you to listen. Stay tuned. You got your shout out. Heck, one of these days you may be able to pick a game for us. Next.
Yeah. We're not always the best video. Well, now that you have the red light and the Pikachu mask, it is one of the better videos. We at least got some amazing takes, I think. Adam, next up is That Guy Is Will VR. He said, I believe we need to send Adam on his own psychological journey through Silent Hill to reevaluate his taste in games. I also agree. I think there's a lot of things we'd learn about Adam. I think, no, nothing we would learn about Adam. I think there's a lot of things Adam would learn about himself if he were to take a venture into Silent Hill.
Here's the
Um,
thing, and this is a beautiful segue into the actual content. I have to admit, just like kind of Will mentioned here, the game is a masterpiece. It is a piece of art because the game was so bad that it made me feel like I was in Silent Hill. I feel like I've already been through Silent Hill. I've already, mind you, if anyone has not played the game, the rest of this podcast riddled with spoilers, riddled with them. So warning, if you continue to listen, it's going to get ruined for you. But I feel like I've already murdered my wife, and I feel like I've been through seeing all of the freaking freaky people. Alex, you're the perfect Eddie. You're the Eddie in my life, buddy. Thank you. Anyhow, Will, I feel like I've been through it. Effing bring it on. Also, may I, before we even hop in further, Alex, have one disclaimer? Could I do that for you?
Please, Adam, please. Hey, you finished the game. You've absolved yourself of all responsibilities now. You finished the game. You've done what I needed you to do. What's your disclaimer, Adam?
My disclaimer is that everything I said in the first episode carries over. My opinion has not changed about the game. It's still god awful. It still sucks. It was still the worst 16 hours, I won't say of my life, but it sucked pretty bad. But I want to say it right off the bat. I'm an adult, Alex, and I understand me reiterating through the entire podcast on how bad it is. That's not good content. So I'm going to say it right here, right now, and I'm never going to mention it again. So it still sucks, but I'm ready to move on past that point and have intellectual and stimulating conversations where you feel that we need to be led.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. So yeah, any positive things Adam says needs to be carried with a grain of salt. That grain of salt being the fact that Adam hates this game. Is that fair to say?
I think that's pretty good.
All
That's not
right.
bad.
All right. Well, Adam, I think our best thing to do, really just to set the stage in general, right, is just kind of quickly run through the plot. If there's something we want to comment on through the plot of the game, because really, the game, it's a survival horror game. You kind of know what that is when you play a survival horror game. Um, but the plot is one of the big things in the game that sets it apart from a lot of other games, I think. And it's one of the things that's almost largely untouched compared to the original game as well. So I think it's fair for us to just kind of go through what we saw. So where did we last leave off in the first episode, right? We just saw Maria, like we just encountered Maria, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
we just saw Laura sitting before we were heading to
I
um
had just gotten to the Brookline Hospital when
okay.
I ended the first podcast.
Okay, and I think I had just run into Laura for the first time. and I was about to start running through the town with Maria or something like that. Anyways, yeah, us go through the plot right now. Adam, you have here. Do you want to run through the plot? Or do you want me to read these off?
Sure.
You typed it
Yeah,
up.
I'll go right through it. Mainly, why I want to do this is one to lay out. I do admit the game is very thoughtful and meaningful. There's not a whole lot of throwaway stuff of fluff in the game. That I do appreciate. I see how this isn't just a standard horror game. That plot really does raise the bar and make it into something different and unique and honestly is better than a lot of the horror games, which most of the time is crap. So I wanted to start from the start or from the beginning.
Yeah,
You wake up in the bathroom, you're like, "Oh, I want to see Mary," and then this obviously is very quick in a synopsis.
yeah, yeah.
Then you head in this. You're going to Silent Hill. You run into Angela the first time we talked about in the first episode here, so I'm not going to reiterate there. Then you get the radio again. Here, I mainly wanted to highlight how good that radio is, dude. When you hear that static coming from your DualSense controller, I mean,
Yeah.
it's so well done, in my opinion.
I mean, overall, I grant you like there's a lot of things you don't like about the game. You at least admit the sound design in the game is spectacular, right? Would you at least concede that point?
Yeah, yeah. Some things better than other. The radio, absolutely.
The radio's a phenomenal piece. So for those who don't know, when you get near enemies, for the most part, when enemies are made apparent, the radio starts crackling. Now, if an enemy's hiding from you, they won't crackle the radio as much. Sometimes it might like sputter in a little bit. But for the most part, there's a radio that like has static playing when you get near enemies. Very terrifying, but also necessary and sometimes relieving. But you're walking through a hallway, you see nothing, but you hear static. You know something's coming to get you at some point in that situation. Okay, Adam, you can keep going.
So you get to Silent Hill, you end up going to the Woodside Apartments, you go through some gameplay. Some of the major plot points is you reach to get a key, and a small girl named Laura kicks the key away from you
And she stomps in your hand.
and stomps on your hand. Then one of the big things is you first see your main antagonist, the pretty much the boss of the game,
Pyramid Head, yeah.
Pyramid Head. Yeah, I don't know if that's his official name or not, but that's what we're calling him.
He's officially called Red Pyramid Thing. Everybody calls him Pyramid Head now, but I think originally he was called Red Pyramid Thing because I think James at one point in the original game said, "Did you see that Red Pyramid thing?" So yeah, there you go.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So that's where you can first see him. I will say I feel like the original did a better job. I missed it on my playthrough. In the original game, you cannot miss him peering through the
Yeah,
bars and just looking at you, he looks really creepy.
yeah.
Here you can't. I missed him, but still kind of cool. It's the first time you get to see him. You see Eddie for the first time, one of the secondary characters. You also see Angela again, the chick from the very beginning, but she has a knife and she's really like sketched out.
So
You
I just want to highlight at that point, Angela's laying in a room, and that room, one entire wall is a mirror, and Angela is staring at herself in the mirror, but also staring at herself in the knife that she's playing with. Obviously, she's feeling suicidal. There's blood on the knife, and James convinces her to hand the knife over to him so that she doesn't hurt herself. Really poignant scene, very well done, but I won't belabor it too much. But yeah, keep going, Adam.
I mean, I like it because I like Angela. She seems
Yeah.
a nut job. But one thing that builds, in my opinion, people who are nuts tell the truth. They're
Yeah.
not deceitful and they aren't liars, right? They're kind of nuts.
They
But
tell the truth as they see it. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and I think that comes in the future. That
yeah.
helped me with a couple things. So then you have the Pyramid Head boss fight. So in the original here, and I want to highlight some differences. I watched the original on YouTube, and then
Mhm.
obviously I played the remake. So this is where the remake, in my opinion, did a lot better. So you're in this room, and it has a bunch of junk, and it's a similar concept. You have to run away. You can't defeat him. You're just wasting time for him to eventually leave after a siren sounds. Do you remember what it was like in the original game, Alex?
I remember it was like a fixed camera view, and it was like a very small room, a very small feeling room. And I just remember running around, and I at some point I knew like because you shoot at him, and you see the sparks fly, which is kind of a visual indicator that you're not really hitting him, right? You're not hurting him. And in the original game, you can't really aim where you're shooting. It's like Resident Evil original, where like you just aim in the general direction of the enemy, and that's your shot. So it's like, okay, I just gotta have to survive and make sure he doesn't hit me. And then that's when I knew like, okay, this is just a survival time. Just survive until the siren sounds. I was confused about what the siren means. I'm still kind of confused. I think it's just a like a spooky sound to hear. My other thought was, is this the part in the original game where you're like leaving a room that's filling up with water as Siren Head is in it?
No, not really.
Okay, okay, okay.
So yeah, in the original, you're right. It's like a L-shaped room, but it's really small. And so
Yeah,
you just run from one corner to the other. And
yeah,
unless you're stupid, he can't hit you. It's kind of a waste. Whereas here in the remake, like he can hit you. It's a little like it doesn't seem as stupid. Like in the original game, I was just like, that is dumb. It's not even scary. This was kind of like you felt some dread trying to run away from the guy. So that's the first, I guess, official boss fight, quote unquote. Then you go to a bowling alley. And one thing, there are a few things that the original did much better. And I think
yeah,
some of the character dialogue are one of those things. So
yeah,
in the original, one of the things you hear, you have to sneak into the bowling alley, and then you hear, in both versions, you hear Eddie and Laura talking to each other. But in the remake, it's just like, oh, I scared you. And like nothing of value. It's just them kind of chit-chatting. In the
yeah,
original game, you hear Eddie ask, hey, Laura, did you find Mary? That I think is important
yeah, yeah,
because it clues you in. Okay, it's not that Laura's making this crap up. She's also told Eddie, and she's actively searching for Mary as well. Up to this point, we didn't know that she was looking for Mary or
yeah.
really even knew her well. That just a little nugget there that I think is important. Also, one of the best friggin' lines that I've heard is maybe even in a video game in general, especially an older one, is in the original, you as James walk up to Eddie and he's eating pizza. And he's like, I forgot what the exact line is, but something like,
It's like, how can you eat pizza at a time like this or something like that?
yeah,
Yeah,
with monsters running around. And
yeah,
it's a really cheesy line, and it wasn't even like super well delivered, but it was funny. Like it added just a little bit of like, okay, that's good. They took that out. Now he's eating ice cream, and it's never even mentioned about the like, why take the pizza line out? I don't.
yeah. That's one that people had complaints about early on, and I was like, ah, it's not that big of a deal. In hindsight, I think I agree. Like it oddly enough, it kind of changes the character of Eddie. I don't know if it's better or worse, but in the overall context of the game, it's like everybody's Silent Hill is a little bit different, even though you're all there at the same time. And so you know that Eddie's kind of seeing monsters because he's talking about it, but maybe he's not seeing the same grime and disgusting stuff that what's his name James is seeing. And so that's a good question to clue in of like, really, you can eat pizza at a time like this. Um, Although in the remake, I instead of eating pizza, what Eddie's doing is he's got like a melted can of ice cream and he's just like scooping it up and licking it off his hands. And the way he does it is like the most disgusting and gluttonous thing. And so in some ways it works towards Eddie's character of like, wow, how disgusting and gluttonous do you have to be to eat melted ice cream off of your hand and eating pizza, like I would eat pizza all the time. You put me in any horrible situation and there's pizza. Yeah, so the horrible's happening, but there's a slice of pizza here. I'll probably take a couple bites. But yeah, so I don't know if I like the change. I think story wise, it makes sense with the pizza. But you're right. It's a funny line. It's a good line, and it's a good contextual line. The bowling alley scene altogether is gone. It's replaced with the movie theater scene,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Which confused me because on the map there is the bowling alley. You can go to the bowling alley. I don't recall if it really serves any purpose at all. I think it was just there to be like, oh, something's going to happen in the bowling alley because it did last time and it didn't. I don't know why it was important to move it to the movie theater.
yeah. There's things like that one. It doesn't really matter, but
Yeah,
like why? Also, a quick note: when you first see Eddie, he is barfing into a toilet. In the original, it was so much worse. the audio, like in the good way. Like it
Yeah.
was actually nauseating. It was almost as if they made someone sick and put a mic by them as they were barfing. Like it was incredible audio. And
Yeah.
the remake didn't touch that. Again,
And I think I read that even then in the original, they had to tone it down. Like
wow.
they it was much more visceral. I think like the what they showed was like not him so much as Bart, like he was much worse originally, and they had to tone it down a bit. But yeah, you're right. I mean, it's still pretty good. You hear him hurling and stuff, but it was properly disgusting in the original. Yeah.
Yeah, no doubt. Okay, so then Laura leaves. She runs into the Brookhaven Hospital. Obviously, you follow her. So you do a bunch of normal stuff. You get to a point where you have a box and it has a couple locks on it. Then it's a huge freaking fetch quest to find the codes. One interesting thing, which I guess I liked better. I mean, I don't know. It's not a huge deal to me, but in the original game, you open the box first. You go, you find the codes, you open the box, and there's a hair. And then you go and there's a teddy bear and you grab the needle and you use that to get an additional item. But the item is like you open the top drain of a floor and the item is like it's a coin, I think, or something like that. And it's a way down the drain. So that's why you put the needle on the hair and then put the hair down the drain to pick it up. It didn't make any sense. I was like, what? That's stupid. In the remake, you find a tube, and then,
Surgical tubing, yeah.
yep, you put the tube, the needle, and the tube together. That makes some more sense. So it's more realistic. I actually like that change. But
I one thing I liked in the remake was that when you I think am I wrong? In the remake when you finally open the box, there's nothing there.
correct.
And
Yes.
James feels very like he has a very despondent response of like, "Oh my God, like nothing." All of that because you've gone through like three mini dungeons to get to that and it's just like all of that for nothing. And then ultimately like a door opens behind you or something, but I thought that was a pretty good part, good acting on the part of the James character,
Yeah, it
mocap
just,
guy.
again, I don't understand, and I'm not that worried about it, but
Yeah,
why
yeah.
not put the surgical tubing in the box instead of the hair?
Yeah, that puzzle was
Like,
all rearranged. Yeah, but I don't know why.
yeah, yeah, exactly. There had to be a reason, right? There's no way they would just change something for the sake of changing it, but I don't know. So anyhow, you do that, you see Laura again, and she locks you into a room. You see her and she's like, "Oh, I need to get a document, a letter from Mary." And oh, it's in this room. You obviously are, oh, any a clue or a lead on Mary. I'm gonna go in there. Friggin', she's a douche. She locks you in there. There's your maybe your second boss, but like the first boss you actually fight, right?
Yeah, yeah. First real boss fight. Yeah,
I'm not gonna lie, I like this.
yeah,
The monsters in this game, that is S tier monsters. Pretty
yeah,
much all of them. I'm not
yeah.
gonna lie. They are this one, Flesh Lip. Oh my, so freaking cool. I don't how would you describe it, Alex? I
Yeah,
mean,
so it's like a body bag that drops out of the ceiling, and in between the legs is the mouth, but there's arms and stuff up at the top. So it's almost like what if somebody was morphed and deformed so much of their body folded in on itself halfway, and the head was down there between the legs. It's very disgusting. In the original, you can't really make out what it is. You just know that it's some kind of messed up body inside like a bag. But yeah, it's very gross and it's very scary. And I agree. This was a kind of a scary boss fight. Not too difficult, honestly. It's really just kind of like waiting for him to pop up so you can shoot him. But I will say, like the music and everything, ratcheting it up, I felt properly stressed out by the end. Almost all the boss fights, when I got done with them, I spent a good like 1 minute just beating them to death with the lead pipe and stomping on them just to get my like aggression out because I was just so amped up through the boss fight, so stressed out through the boss fight. But yeah, it was a good one, a gross one, and one that makes you think about like what in the hell is happening inside that sack that holds the body.
yeah, it was. I don't know. I like the idea of having like lips where
Yeah,
essentially someone's private should be. It was just, it's just weird.
yeah, it's
And,
weird.
and that's that I'm here for. I'm all
And
here for that.
I will just say at this point that one thing, and it kind of makes sense towards the end, is almost every single monster has like a weird sexual element to them in some capacity.
Yeah.
Like the first monsters you see that are like in straitjackets, it almost seems like a bondage type thing. The second monsters you see are those mannequin legs. But like I said in the last episode, when you kill them, they let out like a sexy moan or something like that sometimes, and they're posed in like a sexy way. And the nurses are like in mini skirts, and if an actual nurse was wearing that, it would be like a pinup girl, right? So like every monster has this weird sexual element to them, and this also just includes that weird sexual element of like the genitalia replaced with a mouth. It's and the name Flesh Lip is like a gross, weird, psychosexual. Yeah, it's oh, gross.
That's my kink, flesh lip. Also, as a note, in the original game, you actually fought three of these at one time. Here, you only fight one. But
Yeah.
a quick thing. So then more stuff happens again, just for time. I'm not gonna go through literally everything, but you see Pyramid again. You have Maria at this point. You find her. You see Pyramid Head. You're running away, and eventually, Pyramid Head kills her. You get to an elevator. She's trying to get in the elevator, but the door's closed a little too fast. Pyramid Head. You didn't see how he killed her, but you could hear the guy,
Well,
the
you see
blood.
that he impaled through her, so it's no question that she died.
Yeah, she's
You see the
dead.
knife go through her, and she's just there staring at you through the crack in the elevator. And then she drops, the elevator doors close, and you go down, and the elevator doors open again with James in that similar despondent pose, just hands to his side on his knees. Adam, we didn't properly introduce Maria here. For those who don't know, Maria is the spitting image of Mary. So much so when you meet her in like this park originally, James thinks it is Mary, but she turns around. She's dressed a bit more sexily. She's got like pink highlights in her hair, and she says, "No, I'm not Mary. My name's Maria," which sounds very close to Mary. But she keeps reiterating to James, touching his face, saying, "See, James, I'm real. I'm real." Hey, and she's always kind of like being very seductive with James, of like, "Hey, you want to go? Like, why don't we just go hang out a little bit?" She even at one point takes him to like a strip club, and she's standing up at like the pole or something. Is like, "Hey, maybe we should come back here later." When we have some time and kind of wind down a little bit. And so it's really just this idea of like a hypersexualized version of Mary that's there. James's goal is to find Mary. There's also this woman that looks exactly like Mary, but she's healthy and she's super sexual and she's super into James. And one thing I really liked is that when you first encounter Maria and James is now this guy with this like hot babe with her, the next element of the game going through that I thought this was done really well is like the most action oriented part of the game. You are this superhero James going through bashing all the enemies, rescuing this girl, just looking like a total like Chad, like blasting them with shotguns, shooting with pistols, just obliterating everything. And really like that testosterone fueled hero version of James you could have, really impressing this woman who's super into him. That just happens for a brief bit when you're first running around with Mary. But I thought it was an interesting element that they kind of included in the game there.
Yeah, the I was surprised that she died this soon.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was,
big shock. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, I don't know, a big shock, but I was like, huh. I didn't see it coming. I was like, oh, okay. She seemed like a pretty main character, but all right, she dead. Then after you get down to the bottom level, after the elevator there, you run out of the hospital. You go to one of the things I did was go back to one of the main bars you go to in the beginning, and there was a note that on the wall that said, if you want to see Mary, then you should die, but you might go somewhere else. So I had my suspicions, little things here or there in the plot and just character dialogue that I was like, maybe this man, like James, isn't who I think he is. I thought for a little bit, like maybe he was one of the doctors working on Mary. Maybe he committed her for like something, maybe, different things. But I got the inclination he was in some nefarious stuff. And after I read this note is when I was like, yep, he killed her. And then as we talked through some of the other things here, they just kind of cemented that. So, I mean, what would you say, Alex? This was maybe close to halfway-ish to the game,
probably. Yeah.
and that's not too bad. I mean, in a game like this, you're obviously wondering what's happening and you're taking guesses, but at this point, I was like, yeah, he killed her. Did when you played the original, do you remember how long it took you before you were like, I have a feeling this dude did the deed?
With all of the frame shifting in the game, I never thought that necessarily he did the deed. I just knew there was something that like he wasn't telling you or he wasn't telling himself. Just he's an unreliable narrator in that aspect of like there's more going on between him and Mary than like I'm being led on to believe. Especially with things like the timeline of like Laura saying, "Hey, I was just talking to Mary," and James said, "No, she died 3 years ago." Stuff like that, like things not adding up led me to believe that like something happened and I don't know quite what. But then of course there's like, James is killing all these like monsters and these humanish monsters. So he's obviously not like this great dude. But yeah.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. All right. Before the first segment ends, maybe we can get through just the rest of this. In the second
Yeah.
segment, we can talk about our what we actually think. So then you go to a prison. This, in my opinion, the best part of the game. This is where the red light was in. You're in an actual prison. The silence is deafening and terrifying. So they go between their enemies in the cells, and you can hear them rumbling around and maybe if they're not enemies, they just add pieces of noise
Yeah.
in that just makes you question every step. And it's very alarming, very concerning at all points. Like, I don't know, gruesome, dreadful. I mean, they did a fantastic job here.
Scariest part of the game, bar none, especially with the timer-based lights that you can turn on. You can turn on lights to kind of brighten everything, but they're like ticking away slowly. It's very stressful, very well done in a horror aspect. Yeah.
No doubt. Then you see Eddie again, and there is a dead man next to him. And in the remake, he was like, "Oh, yeah, he made fun of me, and so I killed him. I couldn't take it." And then James confronts him. He's like, "You can't do that, dude." And he's like, "I'm just joking, James." And he walks off. One thing I will note at that point, for me, I was like, did he kill him? Like I wasn't 100% sure. In the original, if you walk over to the body of the dead guy, it says there's bullet holes in him. It makes
Yeah.
it obvious. Yeah, Eddie did kill him. Whereas the remake, maybe there's a little shred of doubt that he did, and maybe he was just joking and he's just nuts, possibly, right?
I
Uh,
think the big clue is every time you see Eddie, you see a frozen dead body somewhere, and it's like, okay, something's happened with this guy. There's always a frozen dead body next to Eddie.
Yeah, yeah, that's you feel pretty good, but I guess I don't know. In the original, I feel like that cemented it.
Yeah.
Then you get to kind of a puzzle where you move a cube around and you go into different rooms and
The
it's
labyrinth, yeah.
it's a fetch quest. It's predictable. It took a long time. It was horrible. Hated it. One thing I'll note though, in that labyrinth, you see Maria again. And I was like, well, that was surprising. I was like, what the F? This chick dead. And then she's just like, what's up? Perfectly fine. You're like, didn't you die? How'd you get away? And she was like, what are you talking about? That's the stuff I'm talking about plot wise I love.
But
Because
of note,
like
it's not just Maria. It's like a fusion of Maria and Mary. It's Maria sitting across from you in some barred jail, jail bars. So you can't get to her, but she's sitting there in like a wheelchair with like an IV drip connected to her, very much like what Mary probably would have been having in the latter part of her life. So it's this weird fusion of Mary and Maria happening. But yeah, keep going.
nice. Then the best boss fight of all, Angela. There's this, they call it daddy. The boss's daddy. So Angela was abused by her father and potentially her brother, right? Because
Mhm.
isn't the boss like the dad and the son like combined?
It's two bodies on a bed fused together in
Okay,
like
so just
latex
two
or something. Yeah.
bodies. Okay.
Yeah.
And so cool. It was psychological and it was you didn't know what was happening, you didn't know what to do, but not in the annoying way, in the like this is really neat, it's unpredictable, anything can happen way. Totally awesome. Once you defeat that, obviously it's supposed to release Angela of some negative feelings. She didn't necessarily see it that way. She also gave another clue that cemented my beliefs that she called you a liar when you're talking about, hey, I cared about Mary. I forgot exactly what the line James said, but Angela was like, you're a freaking liar. And then I was like, oh, yeah, she knows. That's where I said she may be nuts, but she's telling the truth. And I was like, yeah, this man killed his wife. I was sure of it. What do
I
you
mean
think of
that
that little
that
scene?
that whole level is amazing. Where you're walking into the different, like that boss fight as you're running away from the monster while also shooting it. You're running into different rooms with this static TV playing that has the audio of like Angela's dad talking to her and berating her and stuff. I don't know if she was saying a liar because she knows what James did. I think she might have just been calling him a liar because she doesn't trust men in general, because I'm sure her dad and brother were liars. Further details that you find out, like reading into, side story stuff that was written about the game, is that, her mom left her at some point and said, like, you deserve all this stuff that's happening to you anyways. And her mom left. And so she's come to Silent Hill to find her mom again after all that horrible stuff that happened to her. But yeah, that Angel is one of the best like sequences in the game.
Yeah, no doubt. Then you see Eddie again after this, and this was you end up fighting Eddie, and it was, I mean, that boss fight was stupid. It didn't make any sense. I think
So you
one
fight Eddie. He's in a meat locker. You fight Eddie. He's shooting at you because he finally thinks he's making fun. He thinks you're making fun of him the way everybody else did. So it's just a gunfight with meat locker. I mean, it's a shooting action thing. The one thing is, this is the first time when you finally finish it. It's the first time James has actually killed a human, in the game, or so it seems.
Yeah, and I'll talk a little more on the other end of the break because in the original, it was maybe the worst boss fight I've ever seen in my life. It also doesn't make sense when you are 5 feet from somebody and they're shooting at each other. You're seeing blood and they're fine. They can still move around. I'm like, what? It doesn't make any freaking sense.
It's
Like,
very video gamey, yeah.
but so stupid. Boss fight I absolutely dreaded. I hated. Thought it was real stupid. Let's cover Lakeview Hotel when we come back at the end of the break. Any last comments, Alex?
Yeah, we'll cover the Lakeview Hotel with the endings more or less because they're kind of tied into each other. Just very briefly, Adam, did your overall opinion improve or degrade throughout the game as compared to the last session of
Um,
gaming it?
I mean, I guess like it improved because there were a few really cool areas there. Yeah.
Yeah. Oddly enough, my response is it degraded. It degraded.
No
And
freaking. What is wrong with
I
you?
can get into that. I'll get into that later. But yeah, we don't have much time. Adam, I'm gonna have you watch a video of a special segment for you. We'll react to that, and then we'll continue the discussion after the break.
Can't wait. We'll see you on the other end of the break, folks.
It's me, the famous and long dead and retired PSVR game critic that everyone goes to for knowledge. That guy's Will VR. I'm back. Adam, I've heard your take on Silent Hill 2. It's not good. It's bad. It's a really bad take. We need to master debate this. We need to take this one step at a time. I'm going to dissect your review like a frog. My first point is the combat, okay? The combat is important because it forces you to think about every swing, every encounter. No, it's not quick and fluid. It's slow. It forces you to weigh each situation with, can I risk getting hit once or twice? Do I have any heals? Is this monster going to get in my way if I don't kill it now? Am I going to have to go back through this hallway again? Every enemy matters, and they're always a threat. It's a game that has severe consequences in every moment, a quality most games are scared to do now, which leads directly into my next point. Saves matter in this game. Now you have this as a downside with the whole save stations and auto saves, but this is a positive, Adam, the atom bomb. In this game, on top of the severe consequences, you have to actually think, when do I get to the next save point? When can I save again? Should I go back through? Should I backtrack a little just to save so I'm good? What if I die and I lose 20 minutes of progress? We can't have this. It's not quite to the extent of older PS1 games where you actually had limited saves, but it's closer to it, which most games, once again, are scared to do it. It's not a game where you die and Goofy and Donald Duck come, we'll bring you right back to where you died. Things matter once again, where you gotta think about every move. You can't go running. There's no rage form. I'll stop referencing Kingdom Hearts, but it's just silly. We gotta put an end to it. As for the story, I'd love to comment on it, but I I don't think you get the character at all, James at all. You're like, oh, why isn't he overconfident? Why he's so boring, he's so lame, he's not even confident he'll find his wife. Of course he's not. He got a letter from her, but that's enough. He's feeling the tug of Silent Hill. I'd love to dissect that more, but honestly I've only heard your opinion on the first 2 hours, so I can't go any further. Now to play devil's advocate just slightly, I know based off this first podcast episode that you're not a fan of the puzzles and really just any bit of the gameplay. You hate it all. And I could see it, okay? Now, Alex, hold on. Let me just explain this a bit. It's a very specific type of almost dungeon crawling where you're going room to room, back and forth, unlocking one door just to go to another door and get a key there to go back to this other door down the hallway to get that one. Maybe labyrinth is a better word for it rather than dungeon crawler. But me personally, I did find a couple puzzles to be a miss, or I just Google it. It felt like padding. So I do get a glimpse of what you're feeling overall, but that doesn't justify your overall review, which it just sucks. You have no good points. I have outmaster debated you. Just go back to playing Tetris Effect, where you have just 309 hours in this game. This is not a joke. Look at his profile. You're insane.
All right, welcome to segment 2 of Gaming is in Session, Silent Hill Part 2. Silent Hill 2's Judgment. Adam, over the break, I made you watch a special surprise video. Our boy, that guy is Will, who I will admit has had quite a glow up in his absence. Gave you a special critique video. Our listeners will have watched it. Adam, what is your response to that critique video?
I mean, true. First of all, watch out, Will. I think Alex now wants to bang you. 2. you're just wrong. I mean, I don't understand. I don't understand you people. Okay, I get some of your points, but it doesn't make the fact that the game sucks and is boring and it's the worst combat I've ever played. I mean, I'm sorry. If they made the game so that it wasn't so miserable to play, you wouldn't lose anything. It's still scary. The enemies don't make it scary. The fact that you suck doesn't make it scary. It's the red light. It's the radio. It's the sound cues. It's the silence. It's the prison and the monsters. It's not the fact that you suck. So by making it not so miserable to play, in my opinion, you lose virtually nothing. In fact, you make it better. All the arguments about, okay, James is supposed to suck. I mean, okay, I guess. It still doesn't make up for the fact that if he has a gun, you should easily be able to shoot the enemies. Honestly, I wish there was a trophy that, guess what? You didn't use the gun at all, because I would have gotten it, because it's useless. Use the lead pipe and nothing else, because the guns are absolute trash, garbage, useless. And, by the way, the game sucks so effing hard, I didn't even pick up the rifle because they don't set it up for you to make it obvious, oh, I got the key, I better get the rifle now, because if I move through one more set of double doors, I can't go back. Stupid. Just ignorant. Are there any other specific points of that video you want me to attack? Because I feel like he came at me hard. I have rebuttals for everything that he said, but I don't want to be mean. I don't want to tear him down, because I'm a nice guy, you know.
I think his most salient point was everybody who's listened to us for a while knows Adam hates Tetris Effect, the Tetris Effect. Adam talks so bad about the Tetris Effect. And then at the end there, Will shows that Adam has played over 300 hours of the Tetris Effect. So Adam is, much like James, very poignant, an unreliable narrator with respect to what he actually feels and what he says he feels when it comes to a video game.
I have 20 minutes, okay, to play a game. Either I sit there and scroll through 4chan, Reddit, or Yahoo, or I get on the PS5 and play 20 minutes of Tetris Effect.
Or any other game that exists on the PS5. But
no, you can't play Silent Hill 2 for 20 minutes.
You have a Steam Deck. You can play anything for 20 minutes.
And now, note if you could and see trending graphs of Tetris Effect, you would see it is back to 0 because I play Balatro now, but I didn't have Balatro before.
But if you were friends with Adam on Steam, you would note that he has Tetris Effect on Steam as well and has played it on Steam.
Lakeview Hotel. Thank you, Will. I appreciate your garbage take. I do. It means a lot. You would take the time to look up my profile and harass me on both a professional and personal level. However, your points still don't stack up. You are not gonna just everything you said. Oh, it adds value that there's a save feature. And no, well, it's not the save feature I dislike. Don't have the auto save if it doesn't work. If it doesn't add anything, that's why I have the problem with. The combat, I already addressed that. James being a sucky character, now it makes a little more sense. I'll give you a credit, but I feel like you didn't have to suck that bad. But okay, that one, maybe I'll give it a pass because you could argue in this universe of Silent Hill 2, it's important that he's messed up in the head. He's been through some crap the past few hours. So, okay, I'll let that one pass. What was there anything else he mentioned specifically, Alex, that I could just tear up? I don't think so. Everything else was just personal lies and I don't know what you want.
He just calls it lies when he's been properly dismembered. Adam, before we go to the Lakeview Hotel, which is more or less the ending of the game, I'm going to give my brief thoughts about the game, not necessarily overall, but I will say kind of a comparison to the original game. One thing I'll say is this game is obviously much more combat focused. I mean, this is a over-the-shoulder third-person horror action game compared to like the fixed camera angles that you would see in the original game. To me, I chalk this up as to the Bloober team kind of doing some Bloober team things. Like it's not terrible. I didn't mind the combat. Like sometimes it worked really well and I enjoyed it. Sometimes it seemed like a bit unnecessary. I wonder if this is kind of more something driven by the video game market overall. Like Adam, if this game had no combat, how would you feel about it? You think it'd be better?
Yeah, easily.
So like the combat's like one of the weakest part of the games for you?
Oh my, how much do I have to reiterate myself? It's the weakest part of any game I've ever played. Give me
Okay, all right, all right.
NES. Give me NES Ghost Lion or Final Fantasy or Superman or Duck Hunt. Anything is better than this crap.
Okay, all right. Well, I mean, I do think, yeah, they made it more combat focused. It felt like they were trying to ride the line between Silent Hill 2 and like a Resident Evil type game or something like that, which, thematically is kind of like, yeah, Silent Hill 2 is kind of a response to Resident Evil with the fixed camera angles. Silent Hill 2 Remakes kind of is a response to Resident Evil 2 Remake with the third person over the shoulder. That's probably reading too much into it. The other thing is this game seems to be a bit more horror oriented in the sense that this game seemed to be trying harder to scare you. So I think when I originally played Silent Hill 2, it was a scary game. It was a horror game, but it wasn't quite as scary. Adam, did you think this game was a scary game?
I believe for a flat game, it pulls off horror better than almost any other game I've played for a flat game. I'll give it credit where credit's due. Mainly it was that prison scene.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean it was scary? No, it's a flat game, right? But that's not their fault. That's just a limitation of you're playing on a flat screen in a room where you know you're not monsters. You're not in VR. Had I not been playing games in VR, my answer could have changed. When you play Resident Evil in VR, I mean, nothing's touching that except another virtual reality game. I'm sorry. There's no way. So that's where I stand there.
Yeah, I think I personally I don't think Silent Hill 2 is great because it's a scary game. I mean, I understand why it needs to be scary, but I don't think the fear factor is the selling point for the game. And it does seem like Bloober Team, which is historically kind of just a horror-oriented studio. It seems like this is kind of some of their influence in making the remake of like, hey, we know how to make things scary. Let's make it scarier. I think it kind of worked to the detriment of the overall game. But more of that is in this next point is the game's longer. It's like twice as long. There's the dungeons are longer. I think there's even more dungeons. There's a lot more combat in the game. And for something like Silent Hill 2, which to me is like it's a pretty emotionally exhausting game when you're outside of the fact that like there's this horror and anxiety and tension being built up all the time. Just even from the story, it's a pretty emotionally exhausting game. I don't need more of that. I don't need that to be stretched out. I mean, one common thing we see in reviews is people saying there's a longer period between story beats, which I think is a valid complaint about this remake, and that the story is really the big thing about the game, and you're waiting longer between each story element to really see them take place. Adam, how did you feel about the length of the game? If the game were half as long, do you think you'd be happier with it?
Yeah, actually, I added this at the very end of our script here, but well, let's cover it now. This, I think, is why I hate this game. When I watch the original, now, if you know what you're doing, you can play the original game and it was like 4 hours and 12 minutes or something like that. Obviously, that person knew exactly where everything was and what to do. So a normal playthrough isn't that long.
Like a
However,
speed run is 4 hours, yeah.
exactly, yeah. But this, what I paid a lot of attention. What did they add? And they added nothing but garbage and fluff. For example, when you go into in the original, it was a bowling alley. In this remake, it was the movie theater. We've already talked about it. When you go into the building, in the original, as soon as you enter, Laura leaves out she sees you, she leaves out the front door. You say hi to Eddie and hey, how can you eat your pizza? And then you go chase her. Very direct. It takes like 2 minutes. In the remake, you go, you see her, she runs away. You spend 40 minutes walking around the movie. That maybe that's a little bit of an exaggeration, but
Yeah,
you
yeah. But
spend 20 to 30 minutes moving around the movie theater trying to find her until, oh, I got to walk outside and then I got to go to the Brookhaven Hospital. That added nothing to the game. It added nothing to the atmosphere. It added nothing to the plot. And so you're right. Between the plot beats, it's too long. The payoff isn't there. Whereas before, yeah, the combat may have still sucked. Yeah, the whole game still sucks donkey balls, but I only have to suck 15 minutes of donkey balls to see Eddie, or what's Angela up to, or how can I get to Laura, or there's Pyramid Head. Whereas now I've got to play an hour and a half to 2 hours of donkey balls to get to the same point. That, I think, is why this game sucks so much, Chode.
yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to dissect this, right? Like, how would I feel about Silent Hill 2 if I were playing it for the first time, right? If I didn't know how great the PS2 version was. I do think it, although the gameplay I found fine, it was, enjoyable. I do think these longer dungeons, there were parts that even I were like, all right, this is a bit much. Like the jail scene was great, but having done everything leading up to it and then everything after it, I was like, this is a bit much. I'm ready to kind of be done with this. And even after the jail scene, we're going to talk about Lakeview Hotel in a minute. Like some of the stuff in Lakeview Hotel is just like, God, like can we please just move it on, move it along? Like
Yeah.
I'm just ready to be done with this. And part of that is I think, I mean, it's true. The nice thing about the Silent Hill 2 is that the atmosphere is well established. There's a really good atmosphere. The city's a good atmosphere. The environments you're in are like well crafted, and the things that you see in the environments are well crafted. Maybe this was Bloober Team trying to like give you more of that, right? Like, oh, this is the nice thing. Let's give you a bunch more that we can. And they can't give you more story because it's like sacrosanct. You can't add more story to this game that has such good, a revered story. Um, but it's like it's a bit too much, right? Like there were more notes that you find. There's more like lore details that you find and notes that you find around the hospital and stuff. And those things, it's like I don't want to know that much about Silent Hill 2. It's like peeking behind the curtains a bit too much as to what's going on in Silent Hill. That defeats the purpose of this. Isn't about like what actually happens with Silent Hill. this game is about what happens with James when he's in Silent Hill, and I think this kind of mutes that a bit and makes it more about Silent Hill and less about James. Which maybe that's because they're like, hey, we want to make another Silent Hill game. We got to tie these things into it, but I think it defeats some of the purpose a little bit. Um,
Yeah, I
with that, Adam, I think we should go into. We'll talk about Lakeview Hotel a bit, which is like the last section of the game, and then we'll start talking about some of the endings. Does that sound good?
I mean, first I have to disagree with you.
Uh-huh.
First of all, the reason I think they extended the game is because greed. They wanted to charge premium prices, $75, and they know they couldn't get away with it with a 6 to 8 hour game. They know
Yep.
that would be a major complaint. But a
Yep.
16 to 20 hour game, they could get away with it. So rather than making an effective, efficient, truly complete, thorough experience, they opted to water it down to extend the length so they could charge the consumers more. And for that, F you, Bloober Team. And that's why ultimately, I think near the end, we're going to maybe give them a rating. How do you rate this remake? Hint, for me, it's not very good. But okay, I agree. Let's move to, unless you have a rebuttal to that, let's move
No,
to,
I think that's a fair enough assessment. Yeah, I mean, really, how much of that is Bloober Team wanting to do that? How much of that is Konami saying like, "Hey, this is our big AAA remake we're releasing. This is one of the benchmarks of our 2024 game library. We need to make sure it counts." I think there's a bit of like the economics of the game industry currently requiring them to release a game that takes at least 15 hours to finish. Um, Short games don't do great, but this was also developed at the same time that Astrobot was developed. Astrobot's like what, a 10-hour game, and that's done
yeah.
fine. So it's like Astrobot hadn't come out while they were developing this game. They didn't know that a 10-hour game would do just fine, right? So it's a tough call there. I think they would have been fine just releasing as a very similar experience to Silent Hill 2 as possible.
Yeah, I agree. I really think that was my problem and still is my problem. In the first 4 hours that we played in the first episode, I hated it so much because there was borderline no plot in 4 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
there was little nuggets, but then as you got toward the end of the game, obviously it had to pick up because there had to be a resolution. So anyhow, moving to Lakeview Hotel, you defeat Eddie, you get into a canoe, and you're traversing water for I think it was like 3 minutes. It was really annoying, but they did that in the original too.
Was there anything that could happen in that segment? I was hesitant to like diverge from the main course.
I accidentally did because I didn't realize you're supposed to go toward the sun. I guess I'm an idiot. No, there's nothing that can happen. You can get a trophy if you're paddling long enough. So
Okay.
if you go far enough out of your way, you get a trophy. But who cares?
To their credit, I felt like a bit too nervous to go off the beaten path, and I was like, "Let's just head towards the sun." I don't want to see what's on the other side of the. I don't want to see what's anywhere in the lake that I don't have to get to. But yeah,
See, I was thinking, please, anything to just make this end. And so I wanted to get there as soon as possible. Another mark of a bad game, Will. If I want to end it as soon as possible, that's not good. Did I want Astrobot to end? No. Anyhow, you get to the Lakeview Hotel. In my opinion, this part was a lot easier. I should say the combat. I mean, even the puzzles weren't too bad either. I don't know if it's because I've got used to its crap factor or if they.
you also turned the combat down to easy, right?
I
After our
did.
last episode, yeah.
Yeah. But even I turned that as soon as I started again.
Okay,
So
okay.
it's not like only this section I kicked down to easy. But I mean, it was I not that's not a complaint. If anything, thank God.
Yeah.
It made it much more palatable. The stealth portion, there's a portion of the Lakeview Hotel where you get rid of all of your weapons and you have to go into a specific, I think it was a basement, and then there's enemies there and you have to use stealth. You
I
can't
do
fight back.
I do want to say one thing about that segment. The act of you giving up all of your equipment was a bit force fed to me in this mode I basically walked up to a locker and it was just like there's stuff here, and I hit the button and my stuff went into the bags. And then I was like, okay, I guess I'm just dropping everything off here. And then I went down the elevator. In the original game, you get on the elevator first, like you obviously get to the elevator first, and it's like you're too heavy. And you start like you go back to the locker and you drop off like your shotgun and try to like I remember trying to like only give up as much as I could while still making, and then you're slowly coming to grips with the realization that you're letting go of everything. You're letting go of all the stuff you have there. I thought this was not so well done, where it's like, okay, obviously just dump everything to get in the elevator. Oh, what happened with you there? Did you try to get in the elevator first, or did you dump everything right from the get go?
So I was confused, first of all.
Yeah,
I got to the locker and I noticed I was putting some of my stuff away.
yeah,
And I was like, I don't care. I'll throw Mary's photo in the effing trash for all I care. Sure, do whatever you want with it. Okay, I don't need those guns, but I'm keeping my effing pipe. And and so I dropped kind of what I didn't care about, then went to the elevator. This is one point I had to look it up online. I was so confused. Because you try to move, and it doesn't say you're overweight. It says, hey, elevators only has weight limit for one person. But I'm like, I am one person.
oh yeah,
There's
yeah. That
no
is,
other people effing in here, idiot. And I couldn't figure out what was happening. And
yeah.
then I had to look it up online, and the original was the same way. What a
Okay.
horrible way to express that you're too heavy. You're right. There should be something that said, as you just said, overweight, and then you have to drop everything, not
Yeah.
weight limit one person. You are one person. Like, just stupid decisions. Like,
Yeah, and like the super fan of me is trying to think of some reasoning of like, oh, I'm carrying around like my baggage of Maria or something, or Mary or something like that, but it doesn't make sense contextually in the game. It's like it should just say overweight, right? It should just
yeah,
say
I mean,
overweight.
I don't know, whatever. So yeah, so you go through there, and there we're not getting all of it because this time there's a lot of involvement in Lakeview Hotel. There's
Yeah.
a lot of monsters and puzzles, and the hotel itself, the further you get into the game and the closer to the resolution, it starts to shift and change. And it I mean, somewhat minorly. I thought it was okay. Personally, at this point, I smelled or tasted whatever sharks do, blood in the water, and I was
Yeah.
like, "Oh, thank you, Lord, I'm almost done." And I could have. I've never been so motivated in my life to just pile through. I think I finished the game at like 2 a.m. because I was like, I'm so close. I refuse to stop. I have to end this nightmare. And so, um, that's where you go into the Lakeview Hotel. You find a VHS, you put the VHS
So
in.
just a bit of context before you get to that is Lakeview Hotel is where James took Mary on like a nice vacation. This is where she was like, I want to come here again someday. When she was in like the final stages of her life. And when you get to Lakeview Hotel this time, there's like a note at reception. It's like, hey, we found that VHS recording that you made. We left it in the room. You can come get it. You can get it, or they left it somewhere, and they're like, you can get it whenever you need to. And so Lakeview Hotel is you basically trying to get that VHS tape and get the key to go back to the room where Mary said she'd meet you. You ultimately get that VHS tape. You go to the room where you and Mary stayed when you were at Lakeview Hotel, and you watched that VHS tape. Um, and so what happens in that VH when you finally sit down? There's like a TV sitting there waiting for you. There's a VCR waiting for you. You put the VCR tape in there, and what's on the tape, Adam?
You take a pillow and you suffocate your wife.
Well, you see footage of you recording Mary saying like, "Oh, I'd love to come back here someday. This is so great."
Oh,
And then
well.
when that's done, it then transitions to like some grainy footage of James, what is obviously James, kind of sitting there next to Mary's bedside, with a pillow in his hand and him putting it over her face. Now, in the original game, they kind of censored it a bit more. It was a bit more obscured what was happening, but you still got the picture. And I think after you watch the footage, you see James despondent, having watched the tape, finally realizing that him seemingly have not realizing it all along. He is the one that indeed killed Mary. He put the pillow over her face. He was the one who murdered Mary, his wife, who has been terminally ill for so long. When you were going through the hospital, you saw notes that like, we can't cure this patient. We've done everything we can. We've tried everything we can to cure him. We can't, it's not working. And you find out that James is the murderer. James, it's not the disease that killed Mary, it's James that killed Mary. And at that point, the entire Lakeview Hotel shifts from this like, abandoned but still well kept hotel to this like decrepit hotel that's falling apart. Obviously, what is maybe really what the hotel looks like, something that hasn't been inhabited in decades. Um, Okay, so what was your feeling when you saw that, Adam? You seem to think you were seeing that coming from a mile away. Did you have any kind of feeling when you saw that footage and witnessed that scene?
No, no. I was like, oh, I'm almost done. That's what I thought. I do think the original did it a little better. The remake, I mean, you put the pieces together, James killed her, right? But
Yeah,
you could argue if you only saw the tape with no context, you don't know who did,
yeah.
right? The original, it was obvious that was James. So I found that interesting. Not a big thing. Yeah, it didn't surprise me. At that point, I knew. I was like, this dude definitely killed her. And
And then he says
I
it right
didn't know
after he,
how, right? So
yeah.
I mean, I would have never guessed a pillow to the face, but I mean, I unless there's some hidden symbolism there, I I didn't really care. That was a pillow.
Yeah, no, I don't think there's any particular symbolism there. It's just, yeah, James, you kind of put the pieces together that she's been at Lakeview Hotel for a while, right? Or at least she's been in the hospital for a while. James has been having to like come back and visit her periodically. And now this has become like a disruption in his life where he's living his life absent of Mary, but he has to come back because he's obligated because his wife is in the hospital. He's regularly visiting her. And to one degree or another, she's become such a burden that he's decided to kill her and, put her out of her misery or put her out of his misery, however you want to read it, that's just what happens. James kills her. And then he admits to Laura that, hey, Laura, Mary's not here. I killed her. Laura gets mad and runs off. Now, another poignant scene right after this is you're in the decrepit hotel. You're traveling through. You get to the bottom of it. It's flooded. You finally get out, and you're starting to make your way out of the hotel, and you encounter Angela again. And as you're encountering Angela, the hotel's burning down, burning to pieces. You see Angela in a stairwell that's in flames. And to either side of her, there's this like deformed body that has like mutilated genitalia. And you have a conversation with Angela more or less about the experience of Silent Hill. Um, did did you take anything away from that scene, Adam?
I was a little disappointed that that was it. Like, there's no real resolution for Angela. I mean, you know, James was like, "Oh wow, it's hot as hell in here," like at the very, very end, and she was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, this is what it's like every day for me," and I mean, like,
So it's
kind of sad.
yeah, it
Like, there's no real like resolution. I would have liked to have seen maybe it burned down and she died or something, right? But like,
yeah.
she just walks up the stairs among the flames. You never see her again. She's never mentioned, and it's like we know Eddie died. We don't exactly know what happened to Laura. Depending on what ending you have, you kind of get a little resolution there. We
This
eventually
part tells
figure
you a bit
out,
about what happens to Laura, but yeah,
yeah, you eventually figure out what Maria was and why she, even if you want to argue that she exists, whatever.
yeah.
But then, yeah, Angela just, you don't really know what happened to her. And she was
So I mean,
my favorite.
I don't know if it was more obvious in the original. I can't remember. It's pretty obvious, at least in this one, that like she's going off to die. She's killing herself with her by walking willingly into the flames, and as she walks up, the flames more engulf the hallway that she's in. So like and the conversation she has with James more or less seems like James. I mean, she has that pointed conversation with James of like, "What are you gonna do, James? Are you gonna save me? Are you gonna be the one that actually loves me, James? Like, are you gonna help me?" Kind of highlighting that like there's no way to save her. She's done. This is the it. This is it. This is the end. And she's more or less going off to kill herself. But I really like the bit at the end where James says it's hot as hell in here, and she says, this is what it's like all the time for me, which is kind of a highlight in terms of like Silent Hill. Like everybody's Silent Hill is a little bit different, right? What James is seeing isn't the same thing that Angela's been seeing. Angela, everywhere you go, has been this burning environment with these mutilated, sex corpses, like that. James, his Silent Hill is this decrepit, decaying environment with these like sexy zombies coming at you and stuff like that, which then further, you know, gives light to the idea that, oh, Laura's Silent Hill might be totally fine. She's happily running around, drawing pictures on the walls of animals, and nothing's a big deal for her. And Eddie's Silent Hill, probably a frozen meat locker everywhere you go with like dogs or something like that.
Hmm.
So that's the important part of that scene is that one, Angela's going to kill herself. There's nothing you can do about that. Two, what you're seeing is not what everybody else is seeing. We're seeing Silent Hill through the vision of James. So if you're trying to figure out what Silent Hill is, you're not going to find out through James. James can't be trusted. This is what James sees it as. So everything you're seeing is through the lens of James, not just the world in general. Um, and then after that, you go through various means. You ultimately go through a long hallway where Mary's berating you, more or less, saying like, "What do you? Come on, James. What are you going to do? You actually come to me with flowers. You're actually going to try to make me happy here. Look at me. I'm disgusting. This disease, this medicine has made me disgusting." And you finally get to the end of that hallway and you bust through and it's a boss fight. Now, depending on how you played the game, it's a boss fight against Maria or it's a boss fight against Mary. It's either way, it's a body that's trapped inside of a bed, much like Mary would be trapped inside of the bed when she's, disease ridden. And you shoot it a bunch. How did you feel about this boss fight?
This one I hated. It,
Yeah.
it it didn't add much to the story. It didn't feel emotional. It had way too much health. Even on easy mode, I unloaded, I think, 25 shotgun shells in it and literally 110 handgun ammo. And then it died. But I'm like, why? Why have that much health? It doesn't make it, it wasn't difficult. Yeah, I don't, stupid. Stupid.
Yeah.
That's
It's
what.
like at some point you get the point, right? I'm shooting this and trying to kill it. I think that's a callback to the original Silent Hill. The very first Silent Hill, the only way you win is by depleting all your ammunition into the enemy, such that if you went into the final boss fight with zero ammunition, the final boss would die immediately. I think there's something like that happening behind the scenes where it's like, what percentage of ammunition have you spent in trying to kill this enemy? And once you reach that point, then the enemy dies. After that next shot or something like that. And then when you finally kill that boss, it's Mary or Maria lying in the bed, not moving anymore, just calling out to you, James, James, James. Did you try to find a way out, Adam, or did you just immediately shoot it?
Oh, I took a pipe to the face,
There
man.
you go. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then we get into the ending. And now, being cognizant of our time, I think we can discuss the endings. But just in brief, Adam, which ending did you end up getting? What ending did you see when you finished the game?
I saw the water where he was in the car and I mean, I thought it was kind of cool that he looked at behind him. That I mean, at the point, I didn't notice until later.
Yeah.
But he's pretty much looking at Mary's body and was like, "Dude, I can't live without you. I miss you so much. My heart's broken." And then it cuts to black, and presumably drives off a hill into the water, and he's gonna drown himself.
Yeah, and so he gives a monologue about how heartbroken he is and how bad he feels about what he's done, and he drives off into Toluca Lake. Toluca Lake is the lake you boated across. Toluca Lake from the lore elements you see in the game is basically this like mysterious lake where people die and they never find the corpses. It's just kind of like an otherworldly thing where people mysteriously disappear and die. He drives off into the lake with Mary's corpse. That is also the ending that I got when I finished the game this time. When I originally beat the game of Silent Hill 2, I got what is known as the leave ending, which is where James has kind of a section where he's sitting next to Mary. She's in bed and she's kind of telling James, like, it's okay what you did. You need to learn to forgive yourself. And then he has a letter that Laura alludes to, like, there's another letter that you need to see. And the letter is basically explaining to James, like, listen, James, you made me happy. And what you did, you need to forgive yourself for what you did. You made me happy, and I really just want you to go on living. And then James is seen walking, presumably to his car, leaving Silent Hill with Laura in tow because Mary more or less said, like, if things were different, I would have loved to adopt Laura. She's this orphan girl, and I love her. I would have loved to adopt Laura, take care of her, and give her a life. And it seems like James is kind of taking that upon himself, um, and leaving Silent Hill. But with that, Adam, I think it might be good to stop here. We can go into segment, a brief segment 3, discuss the other endings and what we thought about the endings overall. And then I just have some various quick hit questions for you, and then we'll end it there. Does that sound good?
Let's do a couple quick hitters. For
Quick
you,
hitters here?
quick hitters
Okay.
right here. Right here. I want to know why did the game get worse for you when for me I thought I got better?
They added too much to the game. More combat heavy, more horror heavy. It like you said, it diluted the purpose of the game to me. It diluted what made the game great for me. The game wasn't great because it was so scary. The game wasn't great because of the combat. The game was great because of the story. And as you elongate that story, it's like watching an amazing movie and then you see the director's cut and it's like ruined the movie because now what was great, this great 2 hour movie is like this 3.5 hour just like garbage thing where there's all this extra crap I don't care about and it ruins the pacing and it ruins things like that. I think that's a big thing. And then in general, it towards the end it starts highlighting where the cinematography, the fixed camera angle is taken away, and instead you're doing this over the shoulder thing. So that's why it degraded for me overall, I think.
Interesting. Okay, so is it worth 75 bucks?
I don't think so. I think if you're interested in this game, if you're a fan who really has no way of playing Silent Hill 2 again, this is probably a good way to get, 75 bucks fine. Like Silent Hill 2 is a legendary game. The story and plot is still there. Maybe play the whole game on easy mode, just so you can get through it faster. 75 bucks is still a lot to ask for a game like this. And it's a weird thing because I think the game is so long now. I don't want to play through it again. If it were only 10 hours long, I would probably play 30 hours of this game. Whereas right now, that would be 3 playthroughs. I can see multiple endings. Whereas right now, if I wanted to play through it again, I'm committing myself to another 10, 15 hours of what I just saw that I got kind of tired of as I got towards the end. How about you, Adam? 75 bucks? Yay or nay?
Take a guess. I agree with you. Zero replay value. I will never play this again for the rest of my life. But what I will say is at least I played it. And I can say, hey, I played it. I know about it. It sucked. And I don't have to have people like Will, well, you never actually played it, so you can't say that. No, I played it. Watch the original. I think the original is better. I mean, I don't know if I have, do I have the right to say that? Because I didn't play it. I only watched it.
It's hard for you to say. It's hard to accept you saying that, but I know what you mean. And I'll talk about that a bit in the next segment. What dollar price would you put if somebody's like curious? They hear us talking about it, they're curious. What would you say? I'd say 40 bucks.
I think that's fair. Yeah, I actually agree with you. 40 bucks, I think, is acceptable. Yeah.
75 is a lot of cheddar. 40 bucks, I think that's like, all right, play through it once. You've played through Silent Hill. You know what Silent Hill 2 is about for the most part. It's not the best way to play it in some ways, but you know what's going on. Adam, are you glad you are you glad that I made you play through the rest of the game?
Mm, other than the fact that I can say, hey, I played it, no. Like we have so many other games in our backlog that I would much
Yeah,
rather play. Was that Link Between Worlds,
yeah.
or maybe Pokemon Pearl, or Evo: A Search for Eden, or what the other that random game you gave me, Freedom Fighters. Not necessarily we're covering that in the podcast, but that. Balatro, which I've already played, but you have like there's so many other games I would so much have rather played,
Yeah.
but it is the perfect game for Halloween. I mean, I couldn't ask for a better suited game for this point of the year. So I'll give it credit there.
And then last thing here, how do you feel just overall about the plot? We know you don't like the combat. We know you don't like the gameplay. Do you think it's a pretty good story for a video game?
I think it's all right. Back in the day, I think it would have been much better. Unfortunately, just now, and maybe people ripped it off. But I've seen movies with the same exact thing. And so, having seen those, desensitized me to the twist and maybe to some of the emotional stuff that you still remember when the first time you played it getting hit so hard. I didn't get rocked at all. I was like, oh, that's, I forgot which movies, but I know there were at least a few movies that, oh, the protagonist was the killer the whole time and they forgot. Like,
Well, that's not quite the point. I mean, I'll get into it a bit when we talk about the endings, but it's uh, granted, I played the first time I played the game was 10 or 15 years or something after the original release of the game itself too. So it didn't, still that ground could have been well trodden and it quite hasn't been done in the same way. But the game does obviously crib a lot of things from famous media in general too. But okay, Adam, let's not get cut off here. We'll end this segment here, and I'll bring us back in the next segment, and we'll talk about our some final thoughts and talk about the endings. Welcome to segment three. Let me drag you through the mud of Silent Hill 2, just like I drug Adam through the mud of Silent Hill 2. In this segment, we're going to talk about the endings, the various endings, and what they mean for the game, and then a couple other quick hits before we get into our final thoughts and taking you out. Adam, let's go through the endings real quick. We talked about the in water ending, where James more or less commits suicide by driving into Toluca Lake. I mentioned briefly the leave ending. There are a couple other endings here. I don't think I get them all covered here. There's the Maria ending. Now, if you the way you get these different endings is kind of obscure in the game. It's tracking things like, how often you heal yourself. Is James taking care of himself, or does James not care about himself? Um, Other things like, how often do you look at the picture of Mary that you have? How often do you look at the knife that Angela gave you? Are you ruminating on maybe killing yourself with that knife? Things like that. There's even a segment where you're running through a long hallway and Mary's giving you berating you. If you work through that hallway and jump through the final door before she's finished talking, then that has an effect in the ending. So really, it's more or less like, who does James care about? Does James care about Mary? Does he care about himself? Does he care about Maria? Um, for the Maria ending, basically that ending is James, he kills Mary is the final boss, and he goes back and finds Maria at the strip club, and he picks her up, and then they go back and walk to the car, and they're leaving Silent Hill. And as they're walking to the car, Maria coughs kind of conspicuously, and James says something like, "You better get that cough looked at," as they continue walking out. Does that ending resonate with you at all, Adam?
I mean, a cool little homage,
Yeah.
but it blows my mind how people. Why would you play through the whole game? Even talking about the original game,
Yeah.
play through the whole game again just to get one of the eight endings? I mean, it's not
So
good.
So
Like,
people aren't playing through the games to get all the endings necessarily. I mean, some people do, but the ending you get is more or less a litmus test of what, their the game creator's psychological profile of you as a player and how you've interpreted James, how you are feeling about the situation. And when I originally played, like I said, I get the leave ending, which is basically like James doesn't feel too bad anymore. He was concerned about Mary, but he's not concerned anymore, and he's ready to move on with his life. The reason I got the in water ending is because I was repeatedly looking at the picture of Mary. Because in the original game, as the game progresses, when you look at the picture of Mary, it slowly fades away. And so I was checking often to see if it was slowly fading away, but it never did. And that clocked me as being somebody who is, stricken with grief and ready to kill himself. Um, the other ending, a new ending in this, is the stillness ending, where James drives into the lake with Maria's body, but he somehow leaves the car before he drives into the lake, so kind of leaving the past behind. And then there's the rebirth ending, where James gets Mary's body, puts it in a boat. He boats out to the middle of Toluca Lake and basically says something like, "There's secret forces at here. The old gods can bring you back to life." And then there's, of course, the gag endings, the alien ending, where aliens come and like abduct James and replace him with the Silent Hill 1 version of himself, Silent Hill 2 version of himself. And then the dog ending, again, you can't get originally, but if you go through the hoops, you can get it in a new game plus mode, where there's a dog in a secret room behind the scenes orchestrating everything, just kind of a gag ending. Um, do you have a preferred ending from what you know about these, Adam?
yeah, the gag endings, I don't like. They're not funny. Like, I
Yeah.
know it's supposed to, like, I don't know. They seem really weird and maybe like a really bad attempt at like a joke, but not impressed. Um, I was him just driving off the cliff, killing himself seemed a little cliche. Just, oh, I can't live without you. I feel bad. Didn't really buy that one. Um, I don't know, man. Maria, like, I thought Maria was kind of like a figment of his imagination because no one else has seen her. Because the only time you see her is when it's only you and her. No one else has
Yeah.
ever seen her. So then how could he pick her up and leave? She's like a figment of his imagination,
Yeah.
right? So what?
Yeah.
It's like what he wanted Mary to be
Well,
or whatever. But like,
is she a figment of his imagination? I mean, that's the issue with Silent Hill is like you don't really know exactly what you're seeing, right? You don't know what's going on there. Um, yeah. Any other thoughts about the other endings, the new endings?
the Toluca Lake one where he drops the body off, stupid.
Yeah.
Um, the other where he's at her bedside, and I guess that is okay. I don't really love any of the endings, if I'm
Yeah.
being honest. I felt like there was an opportunity to do something weird and unexpected, like to have another plot twist other than, oh, he's the one who killed her, and just none of them really land. Or I don't like them as much. I mean,
Yeah.
some of them, there's resolution, but just not in the way I like, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the gag endings are callbacks to Silent Hill 1, apparently. So I don't know why somebody would go through the whole game just to get the gag ending and not instead just watch it on YouTube. Um so the when I originally got it, I got the leave ending. And at first playthrough, I feel like that ending, like the endings contextualize everything that happened up through the game up until that ending, which is kind of a new thing for games, right? Usually you get to the ending of a game and it doesn't really change much about the game that you played before. It doesn't change how you viewed the game before. Um, so when you go through the leave ending, really it kind of contextualizes, at least for me. Now, this is something that everybody debates. It's a long-standing debate in Silent Hill 2. Which ending is a true ending? Which ending is like the canonical ending? What do the endings mean necessarily? And there's lots of interpretations. My interpretation of the leave ending, where he has that conversation with Mary and Mary's forgiving him, is really that the whole experience of Silent Hill, maybe it really happened, maybe it didn't happen, but it was him coming to grips with reality of what happened, and him fighting these sexy nurses and stuff is him coming to grips with the fact that he was internally struggling with the fact that his wife, who was once beautiful, is now this horrid creature, and he'd much rather be, chasing after more beautiful women and getting out his sexual frustration and not having this pent up sexual frustration with the fact that his wife, who he's betrothed to, is this horrible, decrepit creature. And so it contextualizes everything leading up to it is really not necessarily James fighting through Silent Hill against monsters, but James fighting internally with the monsters and his guilt and his sexual repression that he's feeling with what he's done to his wife. And so I thought that was, hey, this is great. That's one of the reasons I initially loved Silent Hill was that the ending flipped things on its head. I was disappointed. I told you I was mad when I got the end water ending because I thought it was a pretty bad ending because it's pretty flat, like you said, like it's one note. But then having thought about it, I kind of came around at the end water endings is a really good ending too, and that it contextualizes it where, I like you. It's like, okay, he kills himself. Cool. He's mad. He did bad stuff, and now he dies. But in thinking about it, it's almost like when you see James after you finish the game and it does this in water ending. The next time you see James, he's sitting in the car, just like he presumably was before he walked into the bathroom and looked at himself in the mirror. And my thinking is like, is did the whole Silent Hill stuff happen? Was it a physical thing that he actually went through, or was this James, internally, mentally struggling through his memories of going to Silent Hill with Mary and piecing together his memories of what Silent Hill was and coming to grips with the fact that, oh, his wife is actually the dead body in the sea right behind him. He just killed his wife. What is his next steps going to be? Now he's being racked with guilt. The reason he goes into the bathroom is because he's looking at himself in the mirror and facing himself for the first time after he literally just killed his wife. And so the leave ending to me, or not the in water ending to me is like none of that stuff really happened. It's really him internally struggling and coming to grips with what he did and him driving himself and his wife's body into the lake almost immediately after killing her. And then it contextualizes all the rest of the stuff. Throughout the game, Mary's calling to you to come back to her, come find her again. when in reality it's you left the car. You left Mary's body in the back seat of the car. You're running deeper and deeper into Silent Hill. James is running further and further away from Mary. Every time she calls to him, he's running further and further away. And that makes sense with the fact that as you go through the game, James is doing unthinkable things. He's sticking his hand in the most disgusting holes. He's looking down bottomless pits and jumping. There's even one part where you jump through like three bottomless pits, one after the other. And like you said, like, why would anybody do that? That's literally James running as far away as possible from what he's just done to try to not have to face it. When in the final end, he has nowhere else to go. Somebody else isn't going to punish him for what he's done. Pyramid Head's not going to kill him for what he's done. Pyramid Head kills itself. It's you facing what you've done, and then finally driving into the lake. And I came away really liking that ending for that reason. And then contextualizing the Maria ending is James not accepting the fact that he killed his wife, not accepting the fact that he did something bad, and him instead just picking up another woman who fills the place of Mary. And then him repeating that cycle of like, listen, this person is going to die at some point too, probably. They're going to have the same issues with this person, probably. And so if you get the Maria ending, James has not evolved at all as a person. And that's, represented by that fact that at the end he says, she coughs, and instead of being like, oh, are you okay? He says, you better get that cough looked at. He doesn't care about her, just like he didn't care about Mary. So I don't know if you have thoughts about that, but I just thought it was important to go through the ending and how, like, this is something unique to this game, that the ending reframes the entire game leading up to it in a way that not any other game does. It changes the entire game leading up to it in a way that not any other game does. Adam, you'll probably think, Alex, you're looking too much into it.
No, I think some of the stuff he said is definitely 100% correct, but some of it I feel like is a bit making you want it to be significant. And so you play it up maybe a little more than it is, but whatever. I mean, I was pretty much unfazed. I was like, could have been better. You know what I wish I would have done in the podcast, and I messed up. I should have thought of what games have we played in the past that had better endings. Outer Wilds, incredibly better ending than this. And I don't want to sit here and try to like rack my brain. That's horrible audio of me just like writhing in pain and groaning and thinking about what games we played. But this wasn't even a top 15 ending for me. All the endings, let's think about all of it. It just, dude killed his wife. Okay, maybe there's small little details that in the grand scheme of things to me are pretty inconsequential. The big twist was that he killed her. It wasn't 3 years ago. It was like 3 hours ago. And I mean, like, cool, right? Cool, but yeah, whatever. One thing I would do want to mention though is in both the original and remake, after you get your ending, there is a section right after where Mary reads the
Yeah.
note that Laura had for you. And it was essentially her just saying, hey, I'm sorry. I understand the stress you've been through and how miserable I've made your life. And at this point, you need to live for yourself, blah, blah, blah. What I was taken aback by is I played obviously the remake first. So they read it and I was like, okay, nothing. No, like,
No response. Yeah.
no response. Okay, all right. Cool. It was like rather emotionless and stoic, I guess. Then I listened to it on the original game, and I think there really is something about older technology not being having a little sketchiness to it, not just in the fog and the pixelated stuff, and like you can't see things super well, so in a way that makes it scarier. But in the audio, you could hear the voice actor like kind of their lips smacking, and like it's a long
Yeah.
letter, so they have to like breathe in there. It's not one solid, well-groomed audio clip. It's like the person's literally reading it, and you kind of hear that. Hopefully you don't hear it on this podcast. Maybe you do. But when your mouth starts to dry out a little bit, there's like your saliva gets thick and your lips kind of stick together. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but you hear that
Yeah.
as she's reading, and then it is so much more emotionally charged and it 1,000 times better to where like you feel like a visceral response and like a oh man, like you feel something. I mean, what? How
Yeah.
did they butcher that in the remake? I mean, that's the strongest point of the game, in my opinion. That's the thing that drove it home. That I mean,
Yeah.
I know that's not even super related to the type of ending you got or anything like that, but that's the final moments of the game, and that will leave. That's what you take with you when you leave the game. And with the
Yeah.
remake, what I left with was thank God it's over. That's not where you want to be in terms of, a developer.
Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect segue into the next thing I wanted to talk about. And you're totally right, Adam, is when I first played this on the PlayStation 2, I was like racked at the end. And it might be almost entirely due to that performance of the letter being read at the end. And again, I've heard criticisms and stuff about the reading of it this time. But I think it encapsulates kind of a larger point to the game and this remake specifically, in that this remake just overall to me feels less impactful for reasons like what you just said. Like it sounded like a real person in the original, it sounded like a real person reading the letter, running out of breath, having a hard time talking. And the impact of that being the last thing that happens to you in the game leaves you with a real impression. And this, when I finished it, I was like, okay, I played Silent Hill 2 again. I wasn't left
Mm.
with an impression. The game was not as I don't know, impactful.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I think that's encompassing the entire game in general. My thoughts about it. So like my big thought going into this remake, how am I going to evaluate Silent Hill 2 knowing I love it is this now the best way to play Silent Hill 2? And that's what I was hoping, right? And I think ultimately no. And I think there's a handful of things into it. You mentioned the voice acting. I think that's a perfectly salient point, right? I don't want to crap on the voice actors, come some of us down to the direction. I think the James voice actor in some places did a really good job compared to what it did in the original. But overall, the voice acting in general wasn't quite what made Silent Hill 2 special in the end. Um, the voice acting in the original was more disjointed and a bit crazier, and it gave you more of that feeling of like, man, I don't know what's going on here in Silent Hill 2. I'm only seeing a piece of the pie of what's actually happening and going on. Like there's a famous line of Maria just saying like anyway, and it's so out of place and out of character. And it really just like that's like almost more of a jump scare than anything else that happens in the game, and it works perfectly in that, and it's not quite here. Other things is that like Silent Hill 2 almost seems to be like a very much a game of its time and era. And I mentioned it last time, like, the best way to play Silent Hill 2 is to get a PlayStation 2 and play the PlayStation 2 version and plug it into an old CRT TV where you get the static and the fuzz. And I feel like that's still the best way to play it because now we have the shiny gloss, we have these flat screen TVs with 4K and ray tracing and great resolution, and you have these great graphics where the people look like humans. They look like humans in the cutscenes, and they look like humans in the gameplay, and everything as grimy and gritty as Silent Hill 2 is. Everything's so pristine. But I feel like still the best way to play it is with that grit and grime of the CRT with PlayStation 2 level graphics, where the cutscenes are these almost animatronic looking, non-human but not non-human characters that are giving you this disjointed flavor of like, is this really like a person? Is this what the person sees? Is this what I see? Is this what they wanted to do? And some of that gets lost with this new coat of paint and this new engine in Silent Hill 2. And I think that's hammered home by the fact that like in the game, although the audio is so great, radio static, right? Radio static is what's coming through the speakers. And when you see a TV, it's an old CRT TV with that, fuzz going on and stuff like that. This is not the game's not taking place in the 2020s. The game's taking place in like the 1980s or 1990s and all that stuff there. And it sounds stupid, but like the presence of the cathode ray TV being what you're viewing the game through, I think really is almost a necessary element to really hammering home what the game's trying to do to the point where it's like They should make a Silent Hill 2 console that's like a CRT TV with a DVD drive input that's got a PlayStation 2 built into it, and that's how you play the game. I would pay $200 for that, right? My Silent Hill 2 machine. I'm sure other people would. It just seems like that's the way you got to do it. Do you, other than the voice acting, do you have any thoughts on the cutscenes? Because you watched the original game. Do you think those were better?
Uh, I do in a way. I just think the worse some games, some media in general, when it looks less polished, it's better. And
Yeah,
that's where this game lies. Same thing
yeah,
with the voice acting. No, it wasn't as polished in the original whatsoever, but it it was better. It gave you a better sense of that atmosphere and that kind of creepiness and gave you more of Silent Hill. And it's
yeah.
not just this specific game. Like you could even talk um
Even like Super Nintendo games look better on an old TV, right? Because it's like they were designed with that blurry visual.
or I'm even thinking like the way I liken this is I used to watch there's a the Angry Video Game Nerd. You ever watch that?
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
YouTube channel. Back in the day when he didn't have all of his fancy cinematography and the videos weren't crystal clear and everything wasn't perfect, that's what everyone loved. Like it
yeah,
was like a dude just like a bro hating on games, and that's
yeah,
it was relatable, it was awesome. And then his newer stuff got to be so polished. It was like a lot of these YouTubers now where everything
yeah.
is perfect. You don't want that. The newer stuff is so much worse. And that's kind of where I have this game at too. Some things were just meant to be sketchy looking. And
Yeah.
this is it. This was one of those games, and they took that luster away. Maybe they didn't know, right? Maybe they thought it could look better, right?
No, that's a really good point because it's like you said, the angry video game nerd. At one point, he was a dude complaining about NES games, and it was relatable, and you understood what he was saying. Now, at the high production values, he's an actor, right? He's now become a character, whereas before he was an actual guy. And I think in this game, what you're talking about rings true, right? The production values have gone way up in this game, and it's almost like the Bloober team was like, "Hey, here's the shortcomings. The combat in Silent Hill 2 is great. There's elements that aren't as scary. Let's make that better." When they're thinking, hey, we're taking the worst parts about the game and making it better and leaving the good parts alone. When it's like, no, for better or worse, you need those bad parts to be bad. And whether the original developers intended them to be bad, without those parts being bad, I, it's not like they needed to be bad, but the combat takes attention away. The combat in the remake takes attention away from the strengths of Silent Hill 2. And the better visuals and the better, quote unquote, better voice acting and better, graphics in the cutscene takes away from the strengths of Silent Hill 2 and takes the focus away from the things that we should be focusing on. So it sounds really weird to say, but it's like you got a bunch of stuff that we're doing like 9 out of 10 things on, and you got a couple elements you're doing 4 out of 10 things on. Oh, let's bring those fours up to an 8 or 9 out of 10 as well. And somehow you've decreased the entire product down to like a 6 or 7 out of 10, which it's counterintuitive and it doesn't make sense. But I think you're totally right, Adam. The extra money and the extra production values pumped into this have somehow made a worse product than what was originally put out. And it's not even maybe it's not even a product at the time. It's just that shift in focus of what we're paying attention to now when we play Silent Hill 2 in the remake, as opposed to what we're paying attention to when we played the old version of it. So I don't know. I think, Adam, talking to you about this, I think I've come away learning something about Silent Hill 2 and why it's so special. So I appreciate that, Adam. Even though you didn't get it, you seemingly didn't get it. Um, I appreciate that. Adam, I do want to give you my theory of Adam that I walked away with. It might not ring as true now, but this is what my thoughts were about your take on the game when we originally discussed it. Do you want to hear that now?
I'm sure it's full of crap. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you told me that you died like 6 times in the first 4 hours of the game, and I had only died like one time in the first 10 hours of the game, which told me that you weren't even being methodical in your approach to the game at all. And to me, it was like you were trying to play this as an action game. And this is where the armchair psychologist in me came out, and I was just thinking, you don't want to accept that the game is trying to make you feel scared, and you don't want to accept that the game is trying to make you struggle with the psychology of James and what he's confronting. And so, because you're so scared, because you're so spooked, because you're so uncomfortable, you're trying to turn the game into an action game so that you don't really have to trouble yourself with the themes that are occurring in the game that might pop up more prominently if you were to slow down a bit and think about the game, think about the combat, think about the encounters. It seemed like this was highlighted to me when you kept getting lost while playing the game, and you said like, I'm running around, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Which to me, the game, because I was taking it methodically, it seemed linear. There was no time that I was questioning where I was supposed to go next because the map is basically saying like, go here next for the next thing you do. But because you're not, walking through the scary rooms, you're running through them as fast as possible. You're not checking all the doors, and you're not reading all the notes, and you're not picking up the clues. You're admitting that you want this to be a slasher horror game where you could come out of the other side and be a hero. But instead, it's supposed to be a game where you're confronting your own limits as you get scared, but also the limits of the character of James as he's confronting the psychological issue. What do you think about that, Adam? That's my Freudian assessment of you having played Silent Hill.
No, it's ridiculous. It's so freaking stupid. Here's the thing. You play some and you do anything, right? You touch let's say a flame. It doesn't feel good, so you stop it. You do something to make the pain go away. I played this game. It was horrible. One of the worst I've ever played. I was having a miserable time. So, okay, well, what I'm doing right now isn't working. I'm having an awful time. So let me try something else. I think that's what it was. The only time I felt that sense of dread was in the prison with the red light and the monsters. That was pretty cool. Rest of the time, not scary. I was annoyed the whole time. I can't express how unfun this game was. And maybe for me, I have to enjoy it sounds so stupid. I have to enjoy the game some to get in it. Does it need to be an absolute freaking banger like Rez or Astrobot or Kingdom Hearts? No. But I at least have to enjoy it somewhat. In this game, because of the combat, I I couldn't enjoy whatsoever. Like I said, in the very ending of the game, it got better. But so you're wrong,
Right.
essentially.
All
Yeah.
right. No, I mean, I get it. I think after having played through it, I can understand your perspective more. Like I said, my own opinion degraded a little bit. Um, yeah. Do you think had you do you think if I made you play Silent Hill 2 on the PlayStation 2 instead, you would have walked away with a better taste in your mouth regarding Silent Hill 2?
100%. Like I said, the pacing was the problem, I
Okay.
believe. I can fight through some crap. I mean, we played Outer Wilds. That game was horse crap, dog water of a game. I hated it. Not as much as this, but I hated it a lot. And I got through it, but it also, from what I remember, wasn't a 20-hour game. I don't
No,
remember.
it's not. Yeah, it could be very short. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that helps. We play VR games and they're horrendous, but they're only like 4 hours, right? I
Yeah.
can get through that. But an 18-hour just slugfest of miserable gameplay is tough. You shrink that down to 8 hours, yeah. I think it would have left a much better impression.
Yeah. Yeah. I almost regret having made you encounter Silent Hill 2 through the remake. But that's kind of the point of the show, I guess, to evaluate the game.
And you didn't know? I mean,
Yeah,
the
I
game's
didn't know.
supposed to be
Yeah, in
better,
my defense,
right?
I didn't know. And in the first 4 hours, things were almost, note by note, very similar. I didn't. That wasn't enough time for me to evaluate and be like, hey, they really blew this game up too much. They focused on combat too much. Um,
But
but
what's
yeah,
hilarious is that I liked it better as the longer it went, and you disliked it more.
but
So
I
that's
think it's
weird.
I think that's because you started getting more of the things that make this a legendary game in my mind. And I already knew what those things were. And I was like, man, you're really taking away from all that good stuff by adding in all this extra stuff that I don't need.
Okay.
Um, And so it's like I got to go through all this crap to get to the stuff that I want that I know is great. So yeah, it's interesting. Adam, so this game was a commercial success. They've already sold 1 million units like 3 days after it came out. So Bloober Team said they want, they're interested in making more Silent Hill games. Silent Hill 1 is a game that came out on PS1. It's never really had a remake or any kind of remaster or anything, I don't think. It's a game I'm hesitant to revisit because the gameplay is so dated, and I do think a remake might be better for it. Silent Hill 3 is another game that came out that was a lot like Silent Hill 2, I think, in terms of gameplay. Would you be interested in playing Silent Hill 1 or Silent Hill 3 if they do remakes, if Bloober Team does remakes?
I don't think I want to play another Bloober Team game in my life. So no, I will not play these. The way I view it is I played the pinnacle of Silent Hill. And if I not just didn't like it, but despised it, hated it, there is nothing they can do in Silent Hill 1 or 3, which clearly is worse to change my mind. There's no way. I played the best. I didn't like it. That's it. If you go the biggest Dave and Buster's in the whole world and you don't have a good time, you don't go to the Dave and Buster's in Salt Lake City and expect you to like it. No, it's just a worse version of the bigger Dave and Buster's you went to. So no, I'm not playing that.
I think we get credit for being the only podcast that's ever comparing Silent Hill 2 to Dave and Buster's. So I appreciate that. Please put a Dave and Buster's logo on the thumbnail for this episode, Adam.
I should. Would you do it? Would you play it?
Silent Hill 1, honestly, Silent Hill 1 probably. Silent Hill 3, after doing all this, it's like I think I might just need to play it on PlayStation 2. I just need to buy a PS2 version and play it that way, or try to get like some Xbox version that has like the PS2 graphics or something like that. I'm very nervous. It sounds like it's bad, right? I don't think this is a bad game. Here's a question, Adam. If you had to give this a numerical score out of 10, what would you give it?
A 4?
A 4? Okay. No, that from what I gather from you, I see it. For me, like to me, Silent Hill 2 on PS2 is like all things considered, it's like one of the best ever. It's like 9.5, 10 out of 10. Like it's just untouchable. Like, how could you do it? If you touch anything, you're messing something up, right? It's a masterpiece. This is like a 7 out of 10 compared to that, in my opinion. And so to that degree, it's like, do I really want to play another 7 out of 10 when, like you said, we got a backlog of games? It could be good 8s or 9s out of 10s or 10s out of 10s, right? So it makes me hesitant to go through it again. I don't know. A lot of people love this game, the remake, but I think we've properly abused this game. We've beaten it to death with a lead pipe. So why don't you do you have any final thoughts, Adam, or why don't you just go ahead and take us out?
I don't think I have any thoughts. Granted, what we complained about Silent Hill 2 remake doing, we have done with this podcast with having 3 segments and almost 2 hours worth of a podcast. But there was a lot to talk about, a lot to dissect. So I think it's fine. If you've stuck around this long, we appreciate you listening to the podcast. Gaming is in session. I do hope you enjoyed the discussion about Silent Hill Remake. Let us know what you think about the game and why I'm correct and why that guy as well is full of crap and why Alex is a horrible psychologist. Contact at PlayPSVR. That's our email. And we also have our YouTube channel. Feel free to stop by there. You can see us, you can hear us, and you can comment there as well. Next time, Alex has picked every freaking game we've played so far, so it's my turn. We're going to Evo, A Search for Eden, a potential classic on the Super Nintendo. However, it is one expensive mother effer. Please subscribe, rate us on your favorite podcast platform. That wraps it up for the Silent Hill 2 remake. And you know what? If you didn't like it, tell it to the judges.